Hi and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jamie and I have been a nurse since 2006. I am a doctorate prepared professor and I make content on wellness, personal growth, and empowerment. So really when it comes to empowerment, quitting drinking is at the top of the list. And so I'm really glad you're here. I'm just gonna share my story with you in this video on why I quit drinking, and then I do have videos on this topic in my wellness content playlist on what it was like in the first 30 days and how I think media really affects our difficulty with choosing to quit drinking. So you can check those videos out too. Ten years before I decided to make the decision to stop drinking, I had actually looked up the phrase, "Do I have a drinking problem?" Which anyone who looks up the phrase, "Do I have a drinking problem?" probably does. But I'm gonna tell you why it took so long for me to end up quitting, the events that led up to my decision to quit drinking, all the things I did to try to maintain my ability to drink, and what it was like on that last day that I ever had a drink of alcohol. So if you're interested in hearing something like this, stick around. I'll share my story with you. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're most likely a sober, curious person, or you already quit drinking and just enjoy watching this kind of content, which is what I liked to do when I first quit drinking as well. And as you can see from the intro, I looked up that phrase, "Do I have a drinking problem?" 10 years before I quit drinking. And so what happened? What led me to the end of the road? And I think in order to get there, we have to start at the beginning. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, drinking was all the rage. I mean, really it always has been, but I just remember all of the adults that I knew were always drinking and celebrating and having parties where there was just alcohol everywhere. And of course, as children, we're not allowed to drink, but we could see that the goal in life was to be able to be an adult who could do whatever they wanted, which included drinking, of course. And so I started drinking with my friends around the age of 14, and it just seemed to be the thing to do. The first time I ever drank, I took beers out of my dad's fridge, took them over to my friend's house. I think we each had like half a beer, but it was amazing. It was just so much fun, and I was hooked from that point on, really. And so fast forward, 30 years? Around the age of like 43, 44, things just got to be where it really wasn't fun anymore. And I'm gonna tell you what that looked like and sort of the events in that year that led me to decide to make that choice to give up alcohol out of my life. So I think it's important to note that my story is a little bit different than some of the stories that I have read about quitting drinking, because I really never hit that rock bottom, the outward rock bottom, I'll put it that way. I never really hit an outward rock bottom where, I hurt someone, or I got a DUI, or I had the shakes, or I was, having accidents and harming myself or harming others. But it was affecting my life. It had become an unhealthy coping skill that was like a priority, definitely a priority that I tried to protect for years and years, which is kind of why it took me so long to end up quitting. So it was a slow and steady decline. As I said, I started drinking when I was about 14, but that didn't mean that I was just drinking and partying every day. I mean, I was still in high school, and I went to school and I had a job and all of that stuff. But I would definitely say from the time I was 21, I probably drank every single day of my life, regardless of what was going on. Stomach flu, antibiotics, marathon that I had to run the next morning. Pretty much drank every single night of my life from that point on. And the funniest part about that is it was totally normal. So did everyone else that I knew. So it wasn't like I was doing this crazy, risky behavior. I was just kind of acting normal with the people that I knew and hung out with. I grew up in an alcoholic family, and I say that not to be sort of, oh, feel sorry for me that I grew up in an alcoholic family, but since I did grow up in an alcoholic family, I saw kind of the worst of the worst when it comes to having an alcoholic parent, and I was nowhere near that. So that was kind of my benchmark. Every time I thought, oh, you should quit drinking, it was like, well,
I'm not lying in the gutter.
You know, whatever my parent was doing, and I'm going to save those stories for him to tell. It's not my story to tell, but let's just say that was my benchmark, and I was nowhere near that. And so I justified my drinking. Like, I'm fine. I'm not doing these things that I saw growing up, so I'm totally solid, right? That's kind of where I was at. I also was very successful. I am married. I have 3 children. Interestingly, I ended up quitting about 6 months after I got my doctorate in nursing practice. And there's a little bit of a story behind that, but I was very successful working full time. And so again, there was like no real reason to quit. There was no family telling me they were concerned about me, or losing my job, or getting trouble at work, or traffic accidents, nothing. So why quit, right? Everything was good, but everything wasn't good. So around the age, I would say of 40, 40, I started to notice that maybe I drank more than other people, but I would ask my friends in confidence, like, hey, I drink a bottle of wine every day. Is that bad? And they would look at me and be like, no, girl, I drink a bottle of wine every day too. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm okay. You know, I'm okay. I just kind of kept going down that road of like never really finding a reason why I should quit. So I just kept drinking, even though I knew that something was going to have to give someday. Every once in a while, I would try to take a night off of drinking, because if I could take a night off of drinking, then clearly I didn't have a problem, right? Which is funny when I look back on it, because indeed I could take a night off, but I'll tell you, I would be sitting on the couch in agony that I couldn't have my wine. And I would just sit there with my tea, like almost wanting to cry, being so frustrated, but it was like, no, you're not drinking tonight. You're not drinking tonight. I can do this. And I would wake up in the morning like, oh, see, I made it. I don't have a problem. And I really, really would say that to myself. Now that I have, quit drinking, it's like, but I was in agony all night. That clearly shows right there, like, this isn't good. This is not healthy. But anyway, that was another one of my excuses. So then I started to realize that maybe I had a problem. So I started to regulate myself by doing things like, I'm gonna have water in between every glass of wine that I have, or I'm gonna limit myself to 1 glass of wine a night, 2 glasses of wine a night, whatever. And then it would go to, I'm just gonna drink on 2 days of the week. And as what started happening was, that was absolutely never possible. I would make these goals, I would set these limits, and never ever was I able to fulfill them. And so then that started a cycle of me being disappointed in myself and really being unable to trust myself with decisions that I had made and commitments that I had made to myself. So that starts a whole shame spiral of, why can't I do this? I'm setting these goals for myself and I am unable to accomplish them. And for a goal-driven person like me, I was getting very frustrated. And then when I did graduate with my doctorate in nursing practice, I thought, well, now that I have graduated from school, so much stress has been lifted off of my plate, I'm going to be able to really cut back on the drinking, and I'll start going to yoga at night or, doing whatever. And instead it took a huge decline and my drinking just went up so much. And it was starting to worry me. And what's interesting about all of this, for those of you who are watching this, maybe you can relate to this and I would love to hear your take on this, but no one in my family seemed to be worried about me. It was like I was the only one who was worried about me. So if I mentioned it, like, oh, I think I drink too much, people who cared about me, people who were around me would just be like, what? No, you're fine. You don't have a drinking problem. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay. But deep down, I knew that I did. And it was affecting me. It was affecting my heart. It was affecting my mind. So a few things happened in the last year that really led me to make this decision. And what's also interesting about all of these stories is that they're going to sound really dramatic, but really it seemed subtle at the time and almost like I really had to be paying attention to the stories. So let me not get ahead of myself and tell you what happened. So my husband is kind of the one who would always do the grocery shopping. And we had just remodeled our kitchen and I got this wine fridge that was just beautiful. And he would always stock my wine fridge with bottles of wine. Well, over that last year, the wine bottles started to disappear very, very quickly, much quicker than they had before. And one day, my husband, who never says anything to me in any kind of judgment way ever, said like, hey, I noticed that I bought you like 7 bottles of wine the other day and there's like 2 left. And so I just went, oh, well, I had friends over or, made my excuses, but that threw off a big trigger in my mind, like, uh-oh, I'm being found out. So then I started buying wine bottles to replace the wine that I drank so he wouldn't really notice that they were missing. And in my mind, I wasn't necessarily trying to like hide wine bottles, but I was, right? I totally was. So your mind is a very powerful thing. It can justify things because yes, I was definitely starting to hide wine bottles. Again, functioning perfectly fine, I guess, working, getting up in the morning, going to the gym, going on my runs, but definitely doing that. The other thing was I would normally wait for him to get home from work and we would have like our drinks on the patio together. But then I started to get this terrible anxiety that once he got home, I didn't want him to see that I was having more than 1 or 2 drinks every night. So I would have 1 or 2 drinks before he got home so that when he got home, I could have 1 to 2 drinks and it would look normal. So these things were definitely happening. And then some more significant things started happening. And I find this very interesting because I started blacking out, but blacking out to the point where I was completely functioning and no one was noticing it. But for example, in the morning, my husband would say something like about how, whatever happened at the grocery store, and I wouldn't remember that we went to the grocery store. And yet I was there shopping with him and not raising any red flags. So I did a little bit of research on that, and it was like, since I drank every single day, my liver was just unable to heal and really filter out that alcohol and keep up with basically how much I was drinking. And I just started having these weird blackouts, and that was very scary to me. Okay, so a couple more things and then we'll move on from that. I also started to have all of these signs from outside sources. Like I worked at a hospital in the ICU, and all of a sudden I started getting all of these patients who were my age in similar situations to what I was in, but somehow they got injured from alcohol or almost died and now we're on the ventilator from an alcohol related incident. And it was like, I really took a second to say, this is strange that I'm having all of these patients. Like, it definitely seemed like a sign to me. At one point, my husband had gone on a fishing trip, and I remember being so excited just because it was in the summer, and I could go out onto my patio after work and have my glass of wine and just not really have that feeling that I was being watched. And so I was just really happy about it. And so I was sitting outside in the back patio, having my wine, feeling so just happy that I was able to do this. And the next day, I woke up and everything was fine. And I saw one of those green Japanese beetles like fly by the window. And when I saw the beetle, I had this memory of me holding a beetle and playing with the beetle, which I was like, oh crap. And I said to myself, I feel like I was taking pictures of this beetle yesterday when I was on the patio. I can barely remember it. It was like down a dark corridor of my mind. But I said to myself, if you look on your camera roll and you have pictures of you and that beetle, you have to do something. And of course, sure enough, the beetle pictures were there. And then I just looked at those pictures like, okay, all right, girl, we have to make some changes. So I had decided I need to make some changes, right? I gotta limit how much I'm drinking, 100%. We're gonna do this. That's where I was at. And we got invited to a friend's house for dinner. And the friends that we went over to their house for dinner had 2 young children, like baby children, babies. And I thought to myself, perfect. I'm not gonna get all sloshed at a house where there's babies, right? So I had a bottle of wine that I was gonna bring, and I told myself I am gonna have 1 glass of wine when I'm there. Maybe 2. Maybe 2. But then I started to have so much anxiety over the fact that I was only gonna be able to have 2 glasses of wine while at their house, that I had like a huge glass that I chugged before we went. And then when we got there, I drank the whole bottle of wine. But not only did I drink the whole bottle of wine, every time my glass started to get low, I was almost like looking over at the host, willing him to notice so that he would fill up my wine so that I wouldn't have to be the one to say anything. And it was absolute agony. And I remember thinking, I am so done with this. So again, nothing huge happened where it was outside things that caused me, pain or grief, but internally I was so disappointed in myself. And it was just this cycle of every day waking up and saying no more drinking, or at least limit your drinking, and working my way through the day to being like,
well, no, you can probably have 1.
having that one, turning into bottle or 2, and waking up disappointed again. And so after that dinner party, I thought, I have to quit. But now I felt like I had to be sort of strategic in how I quit, and I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. But I decided that I would start with telling people that I was going on the 30-day challenge, basically because everyone I knew was my sort of drinking partners. And, I'll say right now, no one that I knew quit drinking as well. I'm the only one who ended up quitting, but really I'm the only one who really needed to. So I told my mom, okay, Mom, I'm gonna come over on Friday and it's gonna be my last time I ever drink with you. And she was the only person that I told. I told my husband that I was going on the 30-day challenge, but my mom, she's married to my dad, and my dad was the one who we witnessed with the alcoholic issues. And so she said, good, I've been worried about your drinking for a while. And yeah, and I just made that decision. So if you want to hear what it was like during that first 30 days and like the withdrawals, then check out this video here and I'll tell you about that too. Thank you for watching.